The war was lost, but now we're going to win it. And because we have all the cards.
While 2018 was the year trade wars broke out, will 2019 be the year the global economy feels the pain? Also on the program, out of Africa, the countdown to one of the world's largest free trade zones is now closer than ever. And the changing face of Japan, why the country is being forced to finally open up. Hello, I'm Oscar Sabakti, and you're watching Money Talks. The US kicked off 2018 by slapping tariffs on imported solar panels and washing machines. Most of those are produced in China, and the move escalated into a full-blown trade war between the world's two largest economies, with successive rounds of tit-for-tat tariffs worth hundreds of billions of dollars. Samantha Vardas reports on the strain felt on the factory floor in China.
Kinyo has been exporting quartz products to America for a decade, but since hefty US tariffs were slapped on the material used for things like countertops, his orders have gone down the drain. The number of shipping containers he exports each month has dropped from 10 to just 3 or 4, and he now fears his US customers will shop elsewhere.
So they say, okay, I'm so sorry, we have to find a way to buy the quartz stone from some other countries, such as Mexico, Philippines, or from Europe.
He's one of many Chinese exporters feeling the squeeze from a trade war between Beijing and Washington. The two sides have imposed tariffs on hundreds of billions of dollars of each other's goods as US President Donald Trump demands that China change its trading ways. That's also put new strains on American firms that manufacture their products in China.
Before the tariffs came on board, we were looking at moving about 30% of our production outside of, moving it from China to the United States. With the latest tariff development, we'd probably be moving 60% of our manufacturing outside of China to the United States.
But there was perhaps nowhere better to test the temperature of the fallout than at China's biggest trade fair. As thousands of exporters gathered in Guangzhou for the spring and autumn sessions, it was hard to ignore all the tariffs being imposed.
Overall, there are fewer buyers than the previous year. It was more or less affected by the trade war. There's no doubt about that.
For now, China and the US are about a third of the way through their 90-day trade war truce. If they can't hammer out their differences, Washington says a planned tariff hike on Chinese imports will kick in on March 2nd. Talks between the two sides are expected to resume in January, but with a tight deadline, there's still some doubt a deal can be done.
China has far more balls in the air that it has to juggle in this case. And yeah, undeniably, which one will override President Xi Jinping's final decision on matters, we don't know. Although I'm not expecting massive shifts away from the way they're used to operating, because that's not really in their interest.
The Chinese economy has also lost momentum this year. Growth slipped to 6.5% in the third quarter, the weakest pace since the global financial crisis. And the World Bank expects it to slow further in 2019. Samantha Vardas, TRT World, Hong Kong.
Well, let's bring in Andrew Leung from Hong Kong. He's an independent China strategist. Good to have you back on the program. It's been quite a tough year for China, hasn't it? We're seeing over the recent months more and more signs that the Chinese economy is slowing down. Is this the direct result of its trade war with the United States?
Well, China's slowdown is inevitable because no country has been growing at double digits for decades or indefinitely. But this coincides with the epoch of the era, a kind of game changer in relationship with the United States. And then China's trade practices, some of the practices leave something to be desired in terms of intellectual property protection. And so this informed a kind of China phobia. And of course, there is a convergence as well, because it's in China's interest as China a sense in the global power influence league. China needs to reform, continue to open up its economy, because that, as I said, that's the way China to grow its international influence. And after all, China's embedded in the whole world's supply and value chain.
Okay, yes, you mentioned China's efforts to reform and open up, and Beijing has been trumpeting that agenda for quite some time now, but there are questions, particularly from Washington, at how genuine those attempts to open up and reform are. Do you believe Beijing is making a concerted effort to do so, or is it more a public relations spin?
Well, I think that this is, as I said, a difference in the kind of expectations of how fast and how much the country needs to open up. But on the other hand, opening up, I mean, China's been opening up all along. I mean, compared with what it was, say, about 15 or even 10 years ago. And in fact, during the past couple of months, even before the trade war, China also issued directives to open up certain sectors. And of course, as China's economy is changing towards from an export-dependent kind of model to a more internal consumption dependent model. But even if a deal is concluded, I don't think that will set back the relationship back to what it was about, say, 10 years ago, or and particularly even 15 years ago. Because during those days, China was only manufacturing Nike shoes, T-shirts, not threatening Americans' cheese, as it were. But now China is threatening to eat Americans' lunch in artificial intelligence, in robotics, in all the high-end kind of things.
And Andrew, before we let you go, what's your outlook for the US-China trade war going into the new year? Will it be resolved?
I think the signs are showing that even with this arrest of the daughter of Huawei in Canada, with the potential threats of extradition to stand trial in the United States. But in spite of that, I think that Beijing is still carrying on with a kind of exploratory approaches and keeps on the dialogue with their American counterparts. It is in China's interest to open up the economy. It's in China's interest to buy more consumer products. They can buy more from the United States, and that to that extent, it could address the trade imbalance. And as far as the protection of intellectual property is concerned, it's also in China's interest to safeguard overall intellectual property, as China's economy is moving up to more innovation, a more innovative kind of model. But at the end of the day, we're not going to end the rivalry, which is likely to carry on easily for the next 2 decades.
Okay, we'll see what the new year brings. Andrew Leung in Hong Kong, always good to have you on. Thank you.